Welcome to Back to the Batcave, revisiting the animated series. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Josh. Josh, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Adam.
Awesome. It's good to be back discussing and revisiting, as the title aptly suggests, Batman the Animated Series. But before that, there's a couple of news bits that we need to discuss. So since we last recorded, which was slightly over a month ago, there has been an announcement of a new animated series featuring Batman, titled Batman the Caped Crusader. And it's got one hell of a exciting creative team, Josh. It's got J.J. Abrams, Bruce Timm, and Matt Reeves all producing. It says it's going to explore the psychology of the character and the characters and the world of Gotham City. That was, one of the splashy taglines that was thrown about. So, first of all, before we discuss the animated teaser image, what do you think of that creative team coming together for a Batman animated series?
I think last time we talked, Adam, we had discussed, I don't know if it was on air or off air, the potential of a continuation of Batman the Animated Series and how cool that would be. I think that this is even cooler because, and one of the things that I know that we're going to be, this ties into what we're going to be talking about after this, but, Batman, the Animated Series was heavily influenced by Batman 1989, which had come out 3 years before the premiere of Batman the Animated Series. And so the fact that, with Matt Reeves launching this new cinematic iteration of Batman and being directly involved in the formation of the series tells me that, they're going to do something very similar here. They're going to create an animated series that very much is, inspired by partially the Batman, and I'm looking forward to that. Even though I would say the Batman, I'm very excited about the Batman. I love all cinematic forms of the Batman. Sure. To me right now, it feels like the Batman is it's been done. I feel like Matt Reeves is doing something very similar to what Christopher Nolan did.
Sure.
Almost 2 decades ago now. Wow. But I'm excited nonetheless, and I'm really interested to see what they come up with and how his film influences this animated series. Right. There's a lot of people online who are incorrectly, I think, unless I've missed something, saying that the series is tied to the films, but I don't think that's the case.
No, I haven't heard anything of that nature. Certainly the way they're talking about getting into the psychology of the character, there's a similarity there, but like you said, more inspired by, spiritually connected, if you will, more so than directly a prequel or a sequel or what have you to the movie, which is how I view Batman the Animated Series and Batman 89. It's a spiritual, continuation, if you will, more than a direct kind of thing. But just, the sheer talent with those three creatives, Bruce Timm stepping back into the Batman animated world, and then, two really good friends in Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams sort of collaborating is very interesting. I kind of get excited because J.J. Abrams is also sort of the keeper of the new iteration of Superman on film. I'm like, wait, what's going on? If they can team up on a Batman show, is there some way that Matt Reeves' Batman and J.J. Abrams produced Superman could somehow eventually, intermingle and team up? That just got my mind, unrelated, but kind of like, it has my head kind of spinning in that direction. But I mean, with that talent involved, I don't think they can produce anything that at the very least is good. I can't see a flop on our hands with those three involved. And more to the point, the little animated tease that we got, which is an image of Batman and the city behind him, is very interesting because it's essentially the 1939 iteration of Batman. I mean, he's got the curved ears. It's very noir looking. And we haven't really gotten that iteration of Batman in animation all that much. And I think it's fascinating. Just how, my only question is how early on in Batman's career will this show take place? And the other question I want to get your thoughts on is, will this show allow Matt Reeves to go a little bit more comic booky, if you will, than he is, or seemingly is, with the film?
Yeah, I think that the cool thing about Matt Reeves being involved with the show. So first of all, I agree with you, and I totally agree that it's intriguing that he has the 1939 ears. Actually, one of my thoughts when the whole thing about the lack of clarity about whether or not Ben Affleck was going to return, and when rumors were coming out about what Matt Reeves was doing and what he wanted to do, how he wanted it to be a younger Batman and all of that sort of thing, and it wasn't clear that Ben Affleck was done. One of the solutions that I had thought of was, Matt Reeves could set his Batman movies in 1939, like actually and they could call the movies Batman 1939 because that's never been done before.
Right.
And it would be really interesting to see Batman in the era that he was created in.
A full-on period piece, you're saying? Yeah.
Like do a full-on period piece, and then have Ben Affleck's Batman movies be sort of the modern day Batman set in the DCU or whatever. But alas, that's not what's happening. Matt Reeves or Ben Affleck is moving on, and Matt Reeves is doing something new and different, and it is on an Earth 2, quote unquote. Right. So that's very interesting. I do think that being able to tell stories that are a bit more maybe fantastical than Matt Reeves is maybe planning on telling in his films might give him some confidence to do that in film. Might give him a little bit more confidence to show a little bit more fantastical things.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, we're assuming based on, imagery and a 25% shot trailer, footage, that it's going to be grounded and realistic. I mean, the sequels could take a different shape. We just don't know yet. Josh, you still there?
Yes. Yeah.
You lost video. There we go. You're back.
I'm here.
You're back. Yeah.
I'm putting on earphones.
Okay. All right. Cool. No. So yeah, I mean, we don't know how grounded or fantastical, Reeves' first film is, or how subsequent films might get. But this may be, like I don't want to say a testing ground, but it could be kind of that sort of thing with the animated adaptation, the series, and but again, the artwork. The other question I want to bring your way: if you look at the lettering of the Cape Crusader, the title of the animated series, it's very, very similar to Batman the Animated Series. And I don't think this is it, because I think they would have announced this if it was. But could this be some sort of prequel to Batman the Animated Series, given the lettering?
Absolutely, and it could fit within that whole period, because there's an entire period of time before Batman the Animated Series. He's in college, so he's over 18. And so, you know, there's an entire period of time before Batman the Animated Series that this show could take place in. And it would be really interesting to sort of maybe explore the origins of some of these villains. Because again, we're seeing, you know, as we've been talking about in the show, we're seeing a fully formed Batman.
Right.
We're seeing all the fully formed rogues gallery.
Yeah.
So there is some territory there to explore.
Yeah.
That all of that being said, I think that this is probably something new and different.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with.
And of course, as am I. I can't wait. Like when I heard this was a beautiful piece of news because it was also in tandem with, and we're getting a Superman animated series, and I'm like, oh, it's Christmas in June. Great.
Yeah.
Or May,
yeah.
whatever. But
and I will note a kid-focused Superman series, which a lot of people were turning their nose up at. But let me tell you something. Adam, you and I became fans of this stuff when we were kids.
Yeah.
It's really important that there's stuff made for kids. And let me tell you, if they think that new Batman animated series isn't going to be watchable by kids, I mean, maybe it isn't. But I seriously, I think the similarity it will have with Batman the Animated Series is it will tell mature stories that appeal to adults. But it's also something kids will be able to watch.
Absolutely. And you need to appeal to all ranges because, especially kids though, because, we're getting older and, unless they develop a magic elixir that's going to make us live forever, eventually, the brands are going to, and the characters are going to need new fans.
Mm-hmm.
Only way to build that and sustain that is getting newer, younger audiences exposed to them. So if you're scuffing your nose at a younger set series, I think it's foolish. By the same token, am I going to still watch the slightly more kid-focused Superman series? Damn right I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
So there it is. But yeah, so excited about this. I can't wait to see or hear more details, find out who's going to voice Batman. I highly doubt it's going to be Robert Pattinson, even though I've heard that, being bandied about, amongst fans. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be Conroy unless it's a prequel to Batman the Animated Series. So eagerly anticipating who it's going to be.
Do you mind if I just bring up an analogy here really quick?
Sure.
When you're casting for an animated series, voice work is very different than live action work.
Yes.
And, we've seen this happen before with different animated projects over the years, like actors coming on board. People with voice acting experience always do better than people without it. So, in the new Batman The Long Halloween, which I thought was excellent, but Naya... It's very evident that Naya Rivera is a live action actress, whereas Jensen Ackles and some of the other actors in the film have more experience doing animated stuff, and you can tell. And it's sort of like in La La Land. I like that movie a lot, but where it falls apart for me are when Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone are kind of doing. The musical numbers are heavily dependent on their singing and dancing.
Sure.
They're not singers and dancers.
Right.
So it's those scenes suffer as a result. And so, bringing Robert Pattinson on to voice Batman might seem like a good idea, but the series will be better if they cast someone with a lot of animation experience.
I agree. I would certainly agree with that. That perspective, so I'm on board. But either way, we will, of course, as we're going through this rewatch and as we hear more, we will provide more details for you as we hear them and give our takes on those kind of that kind of information when it's available. But as we continue, we definitely have to mention that today marks the 32nd anniversary of the release of the 1989 Batman movie, which starred Michael Keaton as Batman Bruce Wayne, Jack Nicholson as the Joker, aka Jack Napier in this iteration. We have Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale. Is it Robert Wall as Alexander Knox?
Mm-hmm.
Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent, and so many others. Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon.
Michael Goh as Alfred.
Yeah, the whole host of others. It had a great score by Danny Elfman.
Mm-hmm.
It had a soundtrack by Prince.
Which is great, by the way.
It absolutely is. And, it's the first movie that I remember sitting down in a theater watching. It is, by and large, the reason my fandom is what it is today. It's the reason why I'm doing any sort of podcasting. Without that show, or that movie, excuse me, my Batman fandom wouldn't be at the levels it is. Now, that's not to discredit Batman the Animated Series. I remember, coming home from kindergarten and and the earlier grades, and watching that, when I got home from school, got me into the character for sure, and I loved it. And if you ask me, there are several actors that have played Batman in live action over the years. There are two for me that define, that are synonymous with Batman. It's Michael Keaton and Adam West. When you say those two names, I don't think of, Multiplicity, Jack Frost, or, what have you. I think of, if you say Michael Keaton, I think of Batman. If you say Adam West, I think Batman. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Everybody else is an actor that played Batman, well, or to varying degrees, but they're actors that played Batman. Those two for me are Batman, and that's just the way it is. So, but once I saw that movie, it was like, oh my God, I'm full-blown a Batman fan now, and so I can't underscore how important that movie is to me. And so, what are your general thoughts on the anniversary of the release?
Yeah, well, in the years since, there have been better films than Batman '89.
Sure.
But I think that Batman '89 is my favorite Batman movie.
I would agree with that, yeah.
It is both, people have to put themselves in where this film was in 1989. There was no dark version of Batman before this in popular media. There were some cartoons that did episodes that were a little bit more, and they were written by Alan Burnett,
sure.
who was very involved later in Batman the Animated Series. But there wasn't really, the Dark Knight detective in film form. People associated Batman with being silly, like Adam West, and quote unquote silly. It's brilliant now.
Of course.
But at the time, that was sort of the, and through the 90s and early aughts, as we were awaiting Batman Begins, that was sort of the thought, is that the 66 series was silly. So so Batman '89 was a revelation in that sense, because it sort of brought the Denny O'Neil and Frank Miller sort of aspect of Batman into the mainstream, and we are all the more better for it. There is no Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy without Batman '89, because Batman '89 up until Batman Begins was the only proof positive that Dark Batman worked up until that time. Yeah. There is no Ben Affleck interpretation of Batman without Batman '89. It literally has paved the way, and Michael Keaton overcomes a lot to turn in what I think is thus far the best on-screen interpretation of Batman Bruce Wayne ever. He is, I mean, think about it. He's doesn't have the right classic quote looks, but somehow he manages to nail the role of Batman Bruce Wayne, and give the character a level of pathos and intrigue that I think was even innovative across all mediums at that time.
I think it is. You know what I think works for in Keaton's favor to a large degree is that his Batman is very direct. There's not very long monologues, speeches, things of that nature. I mean, we've heard Christian Bale's Batman, go on a whole, spiel about the trigger and this and that, and his speech with the Joker in the Dark Knight as he's hanging there is great. But hearing that whole, citizens of Gotham just proved this and the other, in that gravelly, voice, it's like, all right, now you're taking me out. Whereas Keaton is like, I'm here, I kicked your ass, tell the other criminals about me, that's it. Like, there's very minimal talking. And it's just like the look he gives, and yes, he's not built like Ben Affleck was, but the suit and his mannerisms, his very stoic mannerisms, the fact that he couldn't turn his head, he had to turn his whole body, I think actually benefited the portrayal at that time. There was an ominousness about like this. Look at this, when this guy moves, it's a friggin', it's a whole thing where it's like everything is, So it just, I think it's that. I think the look of the suit again. There's so many things, and then the way he plays Bruce Wayne. He's very reclusive, most of the time. When he's out in public, there's that. He doesn't reveal things. If you ask him if he's Bruce Wayne, unless you're having a business meeting, a la Max Schreck in '92, he's not necessarily going to tell you who he is. And then, at a party, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm Bruce Wayne. So it had that kind of aloof, kind of not to the degree, Affleck or Bale, but it was a different kind of thing, and I think it worked. So I agree with you that, in my opinion, he's the best portrayal to date. It may not be the most comic-looking accurate to date, but it's my favorite. And all that to say, not only are we glad that the film has its anniversary today, but we've known that Michael Keaton is coming back, and we now have photographic evidence on multiple fronts.
Yes.
I think it was a couple of weeks ago, director Andy Muschietti took to Instagram and posted the chest piece from the costume that Michael Keaton will wear in the Flash movie. Now, a couple interesting things that I want to get your thoughts on regarding the chest piece are, clearly it's the same emblem from Batman Returns. It's not the same emblem from Superman Returns, because that would be weird.
They need to make a Wonder Woman Returns now, because then they'll
do. And then all the Carter.
Yeah, all the trilogies all the Trinity will have a Returns movie.
Or if you really want to get crazy, bring back Adriana Palicki, who's supposed to star in the NBC series.
Yeah.
But didn't get off the ground. But anyway, so it's clearly the Batman Returns, chess piece. But it has a little bit more of an armored look. Which, and there's also a bit of blood splatter on the symbol. Now, so a couple things I want to address and then get your thoughts on. Just by looking at the very minimal we can see here, it seems like we're getting a melding or a best of both worlds of Batman Returns meets Kingdom Come. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, absolutely. It's when Bill Raimi from Batman on Film tweeted a photo of the Kingdom Come Batman, and I kind of freaked out a little bit, and I was like, I hope they're not ditching the yellow oval. But of course they wouldn't ditch the yellow oval.
That would be the stupidest thing you could ever do.
Yeah. So I'm very glad to see that they're doing armored Batman, but it's gonna have the yellow oval on it. I'm very
Right.
pleased to hear that.
Right. So we here on this podcast and vidcast are definitely hashtag Team Yellow Oval for sure.
Yes. Shout out to Pete who runs that account.
Yeah, it's a great account. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's that. In terms of the blood splatter, I've seen so much online about, look, it looks like Watchmen. Oh, it's going to be an adaptation of the Button or who knows, or Doomsday Clock, and it's like, no. Just because there's blood splatter and it reminds you of Watchmen, Doomsday Clock, and the Button, it doesn't mean we're going to see all of a sudden, Dr. Manhattan, fudging with time and this, that, and the other. If they take anything from the Button, it would be Batman and the Flash, deciphering or uncovering a case or solving a case together.
Yeah.
Much like they did in that book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like when we see Flashpoint, people say, well, the Flash, it's Flashpoint. Well, no, it's not. It's taking elements from Flashpoint, but it's not going to be a direct, page with, from page to screen adaptation of Flashpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't read too much into the blood splatter, somehow signifying, we're going to get the Button or this and that and the other. I think Andy Muschietti is aware. I think it's a nice nod.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I don't know that, you could read anything more into that.
I agree with you, Adam. I don't think that it has anything to do with the Button. I think that it's a nice, or excuse me, I think that with Watchmen, I think you're right. I think if anything, it'll be Ben Affleck's Batman and the Flash starting the film, solving a mystery together, and then it morphing somehow into Michael Keaton's Batman, who will be Batman much of the film, much like Thomas Wayne is the Batman through most of the Button. And Barry's got to figure out why. So it could take inspiration from that. My feeling is it's going to be wholly original. And I was really excited about Flashpoint is obviously a huge inspiration.
Sure.
But really, this story could only be told on film. They couldn't really tell the story anywhere else. They're taking advantage of the previous iterations of Batman and Bruce Wayne in a very smart way that I think is going to engage a lot of fans. So I'm really excited for it.
Right. And not only did we get the chess piece costume image, we have via on set, photography from onlookers, we have our first look at Michael Keaton in, Bruce Wayne costume.
Yeah, with a wig on.
With a wig on.
Or a hairpiece of some kind.
Yeah, a hairpiece, let's call it. Which I knew, obviously, I've seen pictures of what Michael Keaton looks like, in regular Michael Keaton mode. So I know that that's a hairpiece. But man, it looks like his hair from friggin' 1992. Just all white.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it looks great. I was just staring at it, and I'm like I knew he was coming back. I knew it was confirmed, and seeing the chess piece was great. But literally seeing him in an image as Bruce Wayne with that hairstyle, I'm like, I can't believe it's friggin' happening. Like, that was the moment where it's like, holy shit, this is real.
Yeah.
All this talking, and it's now real. And I couldn't be happier. And again, for those who aren't paying attention, I don't think this is a hello and goodbye from Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne Batman. because the Hollywood Reporter, during the negotiations, said that if they made a deal, that Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne would stick around as a Nick Fury mentor type to younger heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, there's been an announcement that Batgirl now has directors,
mm-hmm.
and was written by Christina Hodson, who wrote this Flash movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Michael Keaton appears in the Batgirl movie.
Absolutely, 100%.
And he hasn't, come out and confirmed it, but Bill Raimi from Batman on Film a while ago released pictures from, I want to say it's Dark Knight 3, with, the older Batman Bruce Wayne standing next to a younger Batgirl. Now, this Batgirl in that story, I think, is Carrie Kelly, because of the nature of the story. This Batgirl that we get in this film will undoubtedly be Barbara Gordon.
Yep. And I think that not only do I think that Michael Keaton is going to stick around in the DCEU, I think he's going to be a refugee from another universe.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to inherit the Ben Affleck supporting cast, which will be very exciting. So I would not be in the least shocked if J.K. Simmons isn't in Batgirl. And I would love to see Jeremy Irons in
Can
Batgirl
you
as well as
imagine a Bruce
Alfred.
Wayne and an Alfred that are close in age? How
Yes,
that relationship would go?
I think it's very funny, and I think it would be hilarious if they initially didn't like each other that much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where Bruce is trying to be the authoritative one, but Alfred's used to telling him, like, should you be doing that, or is this the right way to? And there's like a little bit of a clash. And even Gordon with this Batman would be very interesting.
I think it would be fun for Alfred to say something that Michael Go's Alfred would say. That's very recognizable.
Yeah.
And for Michael Keaton to go, you are a lot. You definitely are Alfred, or something like that. Or you could
give him the cold, bring him the cold soup.
Yeah.
Which could be a nice nod to Batman Returns. But yeah, I think you're onto something there. I would tend to agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited. I say the more Keaton I can get, the better. If he does a trilogy of films that involves The Flash, Batgirl, and then ends it off with a Batman Beyond,
yeah,
I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And imagine, just before we segue, imagine Michael Keaton ends up with the most live action appearances on film of any of the Batman actors.
That just feels right. That feels right.
Yeah. So I can't wait. What a time it is to be a fan of that.
Adam, I know that we've got to get to to what we're actually supposed to do the show for, but I just want to say one more thing. There's been a lot of complaining about Michael Keaton being on like the posters at Warner Brothers, at the Warner Brothers lot and all that sort of thing. And in that hallway, they have like Michael Keaton and Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman. I just want to say that looks right to me. For some weird reason, it
fits. Yeah,
it fits. It works. So
and look, even if there was hypothetically, let's just play hypothetical for a sec.
Mm-hmm.
If there is sort of like this this multiversal, coming together of another Justice League. If Batman ends up being the man in the chair, the strategist, and Batgirl is his representative in the field, and he's interacting with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Jason Momoa's Aquaman, that just adds so much more like gravitas to the role. Because realistically, Jason Momoa and Ben Affleck are the same age. Who the hell is Jason Momoa taking orders from Ben Affleck, basically the King of Atlantis taking orders from a human being of his own age is like, really? Right?
Yeah.
Him taking orders from a Batman who's seen God knows how much crap over 30 years. adds a little bit more weight to it. I think it's a fun dynamic.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
And really, well, like when you look at Batman's role in either of the Justice League versions of the movie, it's more of a strategist anyway. I mean, yeah, he fought a couple parademons, but once he got to Steppenwolf, if he wasn't in the Flying Fox, he was kind of, I don't want to say useless, but in the field, it's like, if Superman's here, or Aquaman, and Wonder Woman's here, what are you doing in the field? Like, who are you fighting in this scenario? You know, so I think it'll work if that's the avenue they take. Do I think fans should be getting upset over a billboard? No, I mean they're highlighting the most popular live action versions of these characters. Of course, they're going to use Michael Keaton and Christopher Reeve. It's not a slight to Snyder. It's not trying to erase Ben Affleck or Henry Cavill. It's just capitalizing on the popularity of those two portrayals. That's all. It's marketing.
Yeah. Let's be stoked that Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa and Margot Robbie are on there. I mean, that just shows how much of an impact that Zack Snyder had on the.
And think about it. Ezra Miller wasn't there. I mean, what are we supposed to make of that?
Yeah. And I will say this, Adam. I think Affleck's done, but I will say, it's always wise to say never say never. So you never know what could happen down the line, and I would be perfectly stoked if Ben Affleck returned in a Justice League movie and Michael Keaton was in it as the Man in the Chair. I think that would be really
I'm not opposed. Like, just because I'm getting Michael Keaton back and it seems like he's going to stay on, that doesn't mean okay. Well, I'll see you later, Affleck. Nice knowing you. I'm a Batman fan, so you want to give me another version of Batman that I can watch? What forms do I sign? Just like with Superman. You want to give me Henry Cavill back? Great. You want to give me Calvin Ellis, Val Zod, whatever? Great. You want to give me Brandon Routh? Fantastic. You want to give me a CGI sequel that continues the Christopher Reeve version with animation? Sure, great. Give it to me all. Like, I'm not gonna. Well, it's only this version now, and that's it. So I don't prescribe to that. The more, the merrier. But if this is Affleck's goodbye, we have to be able to allow him. If he wants to be done, let him be done. If that's what he wants, then so be it. If he wants to return, I'll welcome him back with open arms.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly. But exciting times.
It is.
And we're here for all of it. And while we wait for all of that, we've got the animated series we watch happening, so let's dive in. So what episodes are we dealing with today, Josh? Let's start us off with the first one.
Yeah, so we are oh gosh, what is it called? I watched it. It is, sorry, I'm not being very professional here right now.
I should have had that up too. One of us. It's all the excitement over Keaton that really just threw us up.
It's the cult one. That's the one that we're focusing on.
I could make a comment, but I don't want to start any fights. So
yes. God help us all. Gosh, what is it called?
Hang on, let me see if I can. Whoever gets it quicker, let's. How about that?
The Prophecy of Doom.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So give us a bit of background on this, Josh.
Sure. So the Prophecy of Doom features basically basically Bruce Wayne chatting with a friend and her dad, and the dad ends up being involved in this cult, and he invites Bruce to come along to a meeting, and Bruce suspects that this cult leader is a huckster, and this cult leader prophesies the death of Bruce Wayne, and basically an attempt is made on Bruce Wayne's life, and Bruce does whatever he can, obviously suspects it's this cult leader and goes out to prove it. So that is the general synopsis of the episode.
I wouldn't say it's one of the, it's like top tier Batman the Animated Series. I think it's solid. I like the aspect of, first of all, the idea that it's a cult. It's a cult that is geared towards basically scamming rich people out of their money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting for me is really this scenario of Bruce going undercover, as wanting in membership to discover, okay, is this guy in fact hustling people? How does he know the things that he knows? Turns out he's the culprit, like he's orchestrating these events. But for any time Bruce Wayne has to go undercover, I think it's great because it highlights his detective aspect, and the way he puts on the role of brainwash, or accepting of the cult, i.e., a brainwashed, aloof billionaire. It's furthering his ability to put on the personas that he needs to, which will help him dissuade anybody thinking this guy's Batman. So I think it works on several levels. And one of the funniest things for me was Alfred's reaction when Bruce tells Alfred that he gave money, he put money into this collective. And Alfred's like, you gave him how much? And he's like kind of upset. And Bruce explains, well, I had to, keep up appearances. I had to make it seem real. So I like that. I like that aspect of it. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, this is another episode when I was watching. I was struck by two things. I'm a huge fan of cult documentaries.
I thought you were going to say I'm a huge fan of cults.
No. I'm a huge fan of cult documentaries. Yeah. I loved Going Clear on HBO. I loved the Leah Remini series about Scientology. I thought that was very interesting. I loved Wild Wild Country. I don't know if you've seen that show.
I haven't seen that one, no.
Oh, it's on Netflix. It's very, very good. But a lot of these cults gained a lot of prominence in the 1970s and the 1980s. Yeah. I forget that there was also the cult, the literal Kool-Aid drinkers. The people who drank the Kool-Aid and committed mass suicide. Yeah. So all of this stuff was happening in the 1970s and 1980s. And so it's very interesting to me that this show being produced in the early 1990s, that, it was a topic of conversation of cults back then. So on a historical sort of level, that's interesting to me. This show, I don't know if I've already said this, but this episode kind of falls into the category of a episode that I probably enjoy more now than I would have as a kid.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Even though I don't think it's the strongest episode, I think that I still appreciate it more as an adult. The problem is that the plot is so adult and complex that it's really hard, I think, to make it accessible for kids. And so there's no mystery in this episode. We know that from the start that this cult leader is a fraud. They make it very clear from the beginning that he's a fraud. Sure. And so there's a lot of And that makes it less scary for kids. It makes it less complicated. But I really think if they ever did a live action Batman series, it would be really interesting to revisit this concept and have a full hour to tell the story, and tell it in a more adult way. But yeah,
could you use to that point, if you did it in something in live action, where this was a plot point? Could you use a villain in the Batman Rogues Gallery that's more known to pull that off?
The only villain that I could think of that would really like fall into this kind of category would be Ra's al Ghul or
Ra's al Ghul. The same thing, yeah.
Yeah. But he's kind of a different kind of a leader, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I think, but I think that the here's a bit. I would probably bring him down to earth a little bit more, you know, and all that sort of thing. Make it more. This is a character that I think you can make more grounded, and him being more grounded makes him scarier because of his ability to manipulate and so on.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought that this was an okay episode. Not going to be ranked amongst my tops. A lot of the, you know, it's got the humor, it's got heroics, it's got a lot of action. So yeah, I think are we going to do the ratings now, or are we going to do both at the end?
No, we can do it now and then move on to the next thing. The interesting part was in the final fight.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter of Bruce Wayne's, friend.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess that's how you refer to it. It is sort of like tied up to these props, like the different planets, the celestial things, and I'm like, okay, so again we're getting a nod to somebody being tied to a giant prop, like it screams 66, and we talked about it last episode, just the balance of how this show kind of toggles between being in the vein of the 89 Batman and also being, having the 60s. It's just...
Absolutely, 100%.
Mm-hmm. I liked the way that... And not once did I feel, oh, that's out of place. You just roll with it. You're like, all right, yeah, she's tied to friggin' Pluto, for lack of a better word, whatever the moon or whatever the hell it was. But yeah, it's amazing how that works.
And she was almost cut in half by Saturn.
Yeah. So there you go. It's a lesson in the geography of our solar system at the same time.
Yeah. So what do you think, Adam? What would your rating out of 5 stars? Right, is what we're doing?
Yeah, out of 5. I'd probably give it a 3.
I agree. I would also give it a 3.
Entertaining, but nothing groundbreaking.
Yeah. Yep. Same.
Doesn't really move the overall narrative forward that much.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting sort of glimpse into a case that Batman might deal with, but it's not the strongest episode.
Sure.
For sure. I think it is interesting, and as we segue into the next episode, unless you have anything else to say.
No, go ahead, continue on. Yeah. No.
I think it is interesting that in the viewing order that we're viewing this in, only 2 of the 6 episodes that we've talked about have traditional Rogues Gallery villains in them so far. And obviously that's going to change as we move through the series, but I think that's a very interesting note.
Oh, I think it works well. You're building up, like, so far 2 have been sprinkled in, but it's almost like the way they've structured this rewatch, this order of watching, that we are experiencing Batman's early days with these kind of episodes, where the villains are more grounded, per se. Like, even the Penguin is more grounded than the Joker. Like, the Joker is using, the dead fish, the gas, the garbage, so there's always the guy. There's always that cocktail, the Smilex kind of cocktail kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little more fantastic, a little bit more out there.
Mm-hmm.
But even to the degree of the Penguin, it's really still down to earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I like that there's a progression, building more fantastical as we go along. And maybe that's what Matt Reeves' Batman will do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very much.
So, yeah. So you're a 3 as well then.
Yes.
Okay. So next up.
Next up is the Underdwellers. So for this episode, Batman, there's a crime wave going on in Gotham City, being perpetrated by children mostly. And Batman encounters a young kid who gives him some insight into some more nefarious activity going on below the surface. So this one was not the strongest episode. Today is, for me, not the strongest day. That's not a bad episode. I think what was striking to me about this episode is how much it shows that Batman cares. In that sense, it was a cool moment for his character because it sort of showed how much he cares about kids and how Batman has a particular anger towards people who mistreat children because he was mistreated as a child. And so that was a really interesting aspect to me. It was also interesting to see Bruce and Batman take in an orphan. Obviously, this is something that this Batman and Bruce Wayne has done before, with Dick Grayson being older. Obviously, he at one point brought Dick Grayson in under his care, but that whole dynamic was really interesting. We got to see a kid who was mute through most of the episode interact with Alfred and get into some funny hijinks. So that was funny. The villain, I don't recall his name, but
Was it the Rat King? I think.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I was thinking maybe the villain's the Underdweller, like that might be his name.
That could be his name too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But just there, you can't get a villain you hate more than a villain who mistreats kids,
kidnaps and tortures. Yeah.
Kidnaps, enslaves, and tortures children.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely ticks all the villain boxes for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think notable aspects of this otherwise forgettable episode are the way that it shows that Batman really cares about kids. And this is a sort of, in screenwriting, we have what we call our save the cat moments. It prevents us from thinking somebody is a total bad person. And so obviously this version of Batman is not as, quote, deep in psychosis as other versions of Batman are.
Sure.
But really, this is a moment where we see Batman is a really good person. He cares about these children. He wants to ensure their safety. Right. And that's admirable.
So what I sort of took are similar things to you in that this really, Batman taking an interest in this case and being so, affected by it really speaks to the whole reason why he became Batman.
Mm-hmm.
To prevent, other children having to face the horror, loneliness, and sadness that he faced when his parents got shot in the alley. So I think him taking on this case makes a whole bunch of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that him taking in the kid is also very important because remember, I think as of this watch through, we've only seen Robin once.
Mm-hmm.
And in that episode, I think it was strategically placed where it was because there's like a couple of training sequences with Bruce and Dick. And so I think the reason why it was put there was to give the impression that Robin is still in his early days in training.
Mm-hmm.
So to have Bruce bring a child in, and sure, Alfred is taking care of him, but Bruce, has a hand in it as well. Bruce has to lay down the law, so to speak, at one point with the kid when he's getting out of hand. And I think having him do those things sort of allows Batman, in the order that we're watching this, to gain more experience dealing with younger, youth, and sort of how to manage and foster them. And then he can apply that experience to Dick, even though the situation's a little different. So I thought the inclusion of this episode here also makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The humor is also with Alfred trying to get this kid to do simple things like eat and take a bath and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the moment. The humor came from when Bruce is in the cave watching and seeing Alfred struggle to get a handle on the kid, and he starts laughing. And he's like, "I wonder if I was with as much of a handful back in the day."
Speaking of that, by the way, did you notice that Alfred kept the kid in his old clothes after he had taken a bath?
I didn't notice that, but now that you mentioned, that's a little bit.
I'm like, Alfred, get this kid a fresh pair of clothes. You're telling me that there's not some old clothes that Bruce wore laying around in that giant mansion?
Yeah.
Or you can't order some clothes in for the kid. So that was a thought.
It's a little weird. I would agree that. I mean, what kind of butlering school did you fail? What class did you fail in butlering school? Where that wasn't, topic one on the list. And I'm assuming that if Dick Grayson is somewhere around in the manor, I'm not sure where he would be at this point.
Yeah.
That there are some old clothes, old in the sense that leftovers of Dick's clothes that could have been borrowed by the kid. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in that sense, there are things that make sense, and you further the narrative for when Robin becomes a more permanent fixture that I think are worth value. The villain is somebody that you can hate. It just wasn't the most, riveting.
Yeah.
Of the episodes.
I think that it's appropriate. This episode obviously is going to be very short on our actual reviews for the episodes and very long on some of the news. But I think that it couldn't have come at a more opportune week, all this news, because because the two episodes that we have this week aren't the strongest.
Right. Yeah. It's true. But again, the amount of Batman the Animated Series episodes that are incredibly strong dwarfs the amount of episodes like this that aren't. So all in all, you're going to get these crop up like you would in any show, and you just got to try and find the strong moments in the weaker episodes, and there are some in both cases.
Yes, so, absolutely.
With that being said, what would you rate this episode?
I would rate this episode a 2.5.
Yeah, I'm going to be in full agreement with you.
Mm-hmm.
It is probably, I'll be honest, my least favorite episode of the entire series.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think that I think that this was the case of the Fox executives going, you've got to have kids in the show.
Yeah.
You got to figure out a way to work some kids in the show. And, but it turns out some weak moments. So
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But,
well, I have a proposal for you for next time, Adam.
All right. What is it?
What if we did both Cat and the Claws, because there's part 1 and part 2,
so and one episode.
And the Joker's Favor.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah, because then that puts us, for the rest of this season, it'll keep us even until we get to Mask of the Phantasm, which is the movie they encourage watching.
Which is essentially the bridge between season 1 and 2 of our rewatch, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Which is going to be fun, yeah. So we've got some, just by the titles and my brief memory, my waning memory of those episodes, we've got 3 good ones next episode. So it'll make up for the lackluster, entries that we had this week. But there was some cool news to discuss this week. So I think it balances out evenly.
It worked out for us.
Right. So with that being said, that brings this episode to a close. We're still loving going through the series with you, and we're going to keep going. And so we hope you're following along. You know which episodes we're doing, so you can keep track with us on this unique order that we're going through. But in the meantime, if you want to talk Batman the Animated Series with us, you want to gush with excitement about Michael Keaton coming back, or you want to post theories about what the Cape Crusader animated series will entail, you can do that with either of us on social media. So Josh, where do they get a hold of you?
You can find me at Josh Loves This. At Josh Loves This is the name of my show, which has been on a unexpected hiatus. I've had a lot of stuff coming up at work, but I've got that podcast as well that I'm looking to get rebooted here. I've got an episode where I'm going to discuss the Marvel shows.
Sure.
So thus far, so I think that that'll be my next episode after Loki is finished.
Cool. Awesome. And if you want to track me down, you can on Twitter at Adam_LeafsFan, but we also have the at MMNPDC Twitter handle, which is exclusively where I post the podcast. I mean, if you ask me something on that handle, I'll answer just the same. So either one you want to follow, go for it. And we have the Facebook page, which is linked in the show notes below. Click that, ask for permission to join, and I will add you there as well. And we can keep the conversation going. And that will do it for this week. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you will be back next time. And we want you to remember, in between episodes, that Batman, the animated series, is forever, from a strong episode to a subpar episode. So long, everybody.
Bye.